everybody. I'm Candid. Frankie's Aaron William Freeland, and this is Leaf Talk. And by Leaf Talk, that red maple leaf behind me and that red maple leaf right there. So the T represents Toronto, of which Canada supports, or T supports Canada. Either way you look at it, there seems to be this debate that are the Blue Jays Canada's team? Let me see now. I'm looking at I'm imagining all the teams that are in Major League Baseball. And do any of them fit the definition of being Canadian in any way? Now, Seattle could be considered kind of, but, not.
It's the old, sure, they're in Canada, but they have no Canadian players sort of thing for the Toronto Blue Jays.
That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything, because in the same token, the same people say, well, the American team has Canadian players, so they're just as Canadian as Canadian teams. No, they're not. They're just not. They don't say Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. They don't say Montreal, Quebec, Canada. They don't say Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So, far as I'm concerned, it's a team. Toronto in Canada is playing against Los Angeles in California, USA. They're playing against them. They're wearing our maple leaf. And in the world today, where there seems to be a debate over the contribution that immigrants, migrants, visitors to a country that contribute, that, what kind of contribution they can make. Well, baseball players right now are drawing a lot of attention to Toronto and Canada. And if you think it's not relevant to Canadians, I think it's relevant to most Canadians. But there are always the naysayers. There are always the people who want to row in the opposite direction that most people want to row, because it makes them feel good, because they feel smarter because they're part of a smaller group. Listen, the Toronto Blue Jays are the Toronto Blue Jays. Yes, there are Americans on the team. But that doesn't matter. They represent Toronto, and that's what it's about. The fans, the people that go to the game are mostly Canadian. Even some of them aren't Canadian. But anyway, Aaron, I had my rant. You can have yours now.
Oh, no, I'm good. I 100% agree. I'm leaving you there holding the Canada dry.
You literally left me holding the can. You literally. And it's not even figuratively. Literally, he left me holding the can. That's okay. I've been holding the can for a long time. All right. So let's go to Samuelson and the Sabres and the Maple Leafs.
Yeah. Matthias Samuelsson scored 2 goals for Buffalo in a 5-3 win against the Maple Leafs on Friday afternoon. That game was actually moved from 7:30 to 7 o'clock so as to not interfere over much with the World Series. But seeing as there's no Buffalo team that's participating, I don't think they particularly cared. Yuri Kolik and Tage Thompson each had a goal and an assist, and Alex Lyon made 31 saves for the Sabres, who are now 4-4-0, who have won 4 of their past 5 games after losing their first 3 games of the season. William Nylander, Austin Matthews, and Dakota Joshua scored for the Maple Leafs, who are 3-4-1, and they've managed to lose 3 straight, 0-2-1. Anthony Stolarz made 25 saves. This had some people ringing the alarm bells because, it's less than a tenth of the way through the season and the Maple Leafs are already putting up stinker games. But at the same time, it's one of those, people need to take a step back, breathe. There's still 90% of the season to go.
Well, look, let's be serious here, okay? Let's not kid ourselves, okay? This is a Leaf team in a situation that leaves them in a doubtful position, as much because of how much they have to prove, because they're dealing with the blow of having one of the best players in the league leaving their team to go play for another team. And then you add the fact that there's a couple of teams below them, and we've seen early that the Buffalo Sabres, you can't say they're not the old Buffalo Sabres because, in the middle, I'm arguing with myself. I apologize because I'm in the middle of talking about how great Buffalo is. uh, they've done this before. They've had a great start to the season, just like Ottawa, and then they fall apart. So the point being that there's more ability in Ottawa, Montreal, right, and Buffalo, three teams in their division that I think it's fair to say they've given us rise to believe that they're improved. So because they're improved, we're not the only ones there that figured that out. I think some Leaf fans have figured that out, and they know historically one of the reasons why the Leafs have had a great season is because they started well, got in a good position, and maintained it. This is new this year. This year, there's fear that they're going to have to be a team that's going to struggle through December and the end of the winter, chasing a playoff spot, not fighting for first. Do you think that's possible? I know you're basically intimating, hey guys, don't panic. Too early to panic. I agree, but do you think foresight wise, knowing what we know, there's more to be concerned about them making the playoffs this year than there has been in the past few years?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the Leafs are definitely not making hay when they have the opportunity. The fact that we find ourselves out of a wild card spot, even though it's only 9 games into the season, and tied with Ottawa and Buffalo at 4-4-1, and the fact that the Habs have jumped out to a 7-3-0 start, the Detroit Red Wings are at a 6-3-0 start, and the Stanley Cup champions, even minus a couple of their bigger players, are still at 5-5-0. Is a big indication to me that we may be in for a bit of a tough slog of it. So, not to get too happy about where we are or get too sad about where we are, but as it currently stands, there's a bit of a road ahead of us, and we're certainly not helping our own cause.
Absolutely. And as does happen in the world of sports, how you perform early could be punishment for late. Because what you don't do now, you got to do twice as hard later. So getting behind now means making up points, and the Leafs can't afford to do that. Just as any team at any time in the National Hockey League, these are the points that you got to get because later you're going to need them. And right now, the Leafs are marginally a good team. Marginally, you call it the Gary. They're flush with Gary Bettman points. Well, Gary,
Yeah,
Bettman
they're Gary Bettman 500 at this point.
Yeah. So you're not going to get in the playoffs with Gary Bettman points. You got to win out. You got to win out. You got to win out. You got to do that kind of stuff. But still, it is what it is. So the Leafs, we talked at the beginning of this year how the Leafs are pretty set in goaltending, and then all of a sudden Wall goes AWOL. Well, he was asking for that. He shouldn't have a name like that. So he was going AWOL. And while he went AWOL, the Leafs decided to pick up a goaltender in Primo. Good hockey stock, Wayne Primo, the father. So tell me, Aaron, what did you think of this goaltender? He's one of the kind of goaltenders the Leafs used to have, a smallish, acrobatic goaltender. They're giving him a good look.
Oh, they definitely are. Caden Primo was virtually unbeatable in the AHL. He was an absolute standout when he played down in the A. Unfortunately, his 880 something when they brought him up to the NHL made him borderline unusable for the Habs last year. I think part of that is the team that was in front of him. The other part of that is confidence issues after coming from the Rocket to the Habs and just realizing that you're going to get shelled. But in not to sound too hyperbolic, but I think that was one of the bigger games that Primo needed to have in order for the Maple Leafs to continue to be middle of the pack as they currently are. Unfortunately, it was a hard luck night for Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen against Toronto. Tavares burned him in overtime, and he's now 0-5-2 in his career against the Leafs, facing just 22 shots last game. Colton Ellis it was supposed to be Colton Ellis' start. He became the first Nova Scotian goaltender to play in the NHL in more than a decade, but he unfortunately woke up too sick to play on Saturday, which is why Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen had to pick up the slack. But regardless of who he was facing between the pipes on the other end, it was important for Caden to have a decent start, and he definitely did for this particular game.
What Caden needs, as far as confidence is concerned, the 880 doesn't hurt as bad if you add a W beside it.
No, that's for sure.
So the percentage, the save percentage, it loses its significance if you win. So he's done that both times he's been in goal. So he's had a pretty good career so far with the Maple Leafs. If 2 games makes up a career, I'll compare him to Pickard in Edmonton. Pickard's like 25 and 14 or something for the Edmonton Oilers. And they're still wondering what goaltender they should. Every time they put him in there, he wins. We saw it in the playoffs. We saw it everywhere else. So the old Grant Fuhr, credo. Just stop the right ones. Don't let in the goals that'll kill you. And if a goaltender does that and the team wins, that's what you remember. But we seem to be more prone, hockey in general, by we, I mean the Royal we seem really concerned with high percentage saves, goaltenders that really, kitty bar the door, right? The goaltenders that just win, they lose a little luster because of their, the goal, the percentage, the shot percentage of goals that go in, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, even when you look at Calvin Pickard, he's currently rocking an .846 save percentage with Edmonton so far this season. But in the 4 games that he's played, he's 2-1-0. So again, you throw that W in front of it, all of a sudden that .846 doesn't look nearly as bad, but it's still cause for concern.
Now, tucked in between this story that we just talked about and the next one is one about Tuck, who didn't like a hit and decided to take on the person who laid out the hit, not realizing that there would be a fight in the next couple of seconds, because I think that's a surprise for teams that play the Leafs. You don't expect that. So it was a hit that was clean. It wasn't a penalty, and he went and decided he was going to tell the Leaf defenseman that, I don't like this. Leaf defenseman said, "Oh, you don't? Smash, smash, and smash." I don't know, Aaron. What do you think of that? I was watching it.
I don't think Alex Tuck expected that after McCabe hit Bowen Byram with a clean hit. Out of all of that, for taking a fist to the face, Tuck ended up with 2, 5, and a 10, whereas McCabe only ended up with a 5. Some were arguing that McCabe probably deserved more for tossing the gloves first as soon as he saw Tuck look in his direction. But I think the intent was fairly obvious as soon as the hit was made and Tuck turned the corner.
Well, if you're watching
something like that was going to happen,
if you were watching Hockey Night in Canada, there was a definition of why that was an instigator penalty, and all I can say to that is, clean hits that are not liked by other teams, they can whine at somebody, but if you come at the guy because of a clean hit, and that team is losing and they're not having a good season, you're putting your own life in your hands. You gotta read your audience, right? You gotta know your audience, and that was a dumb thing to do, because it wasn't even really a hit, Aaron. From my perspective, what I saw a locking of the arms, and that's what caused him to go flying, because they locked arms. It was a hit like that. He got inside his arm and his arm was locked and it spun him around. There was barely any contact to his mainframe, if you will.
Yeah, it was all external peripheral contact, really, which is what caused the spin in the first place. It's not. Right. It wasn't a dirty hit in the slightest. So
it wasn't even dead on.
The fact that Tuck saw his teammate go down and then immediately responded is an indication of the culture that Lindy's trying to build in his 3rd trip around the sun with Buffalo.
Yeah, probably.
So, we'll see.
Maybe 8th. This wasn't the first one was his donut term, wasn't it? Wasn't it the donut term the first time?
Yeah. And then you're just a joke.
Offered Koharski a box of donuts. It was Koharski, right? Wasn't it? I think so. Yeah. Well, Buffalo. Hey, look. He looked at it as though he was standing up for a teammate. the Leaf defenseman thought it was him complaining about a clean hit, and that, get out of my face. So, both parties were okay. I think where the media, the people in the TV studio, the main thing they seem to question whether it should have been, the extra penalty going to Tuck. But, they had made a couple of really bad calls against the Leafs, and I think that was an evening up thing. I think that was an opportunity for them to even things up. We saw a couple of penalties there that were less than truthful and fair. So I think this was a makeup call. And people say that's what happens with referees, right? They make a mistake. The only way they can fix it is make another mistake.
It's a compounding of mistakes, I think, that eventually gets to people too.
Well, see, that's what hurts their reputation. While they're trying to maintain what they think in their own mind is balance, nobody thinks about it's one for this and one for that. Everybody goes, see, two mistakes side by side. Yeah, that's just too bad. Let's talk about Stolars and the Sabres.
So basically, the Leafs were taking advantage of a very little used portion of the new collective bargaining agreement. Specifically, they were looking at 16.13, which is the goaltender exemption. Because Stolars played 7 of the Leafs' first 8 games, they were allowed to kick that into effect, which temporarily allows them to exceed the 23-player roster limit while Stolars is recovering and Woll still hasn't joined the team, but let them bring in Primo. Now, they are allowed to use this exemption, which lasts for a maximum of 48 hours. So the fact that they triggered it when they did meant that they could use the extra goalie just so they could give Stolars his rest.
And he got his rest, and It was necessary just by virtue of how many games you pointed out that he played. Why Joseph Woll isn't playing for the Leafs yet?
Well, he isn't playing for the Leafs yet because they had to place him on long-term injured reserve. He's skating with the team. He's going to join the team for practice, but because he's on LTIR, he can't rejoin the Leafs in a game situation until at least November 1st. This is assuming that there's going to be a conditioning stint in there as well. But at this point, there's no set ideas when he'll actually be able to play an NHL game. Last season, he was 27-14-1 with a 2.73 goals against average and a 909 save percentage. Odds are he's going to end up playing with the Marlies for a couple of games first before he swings back up with the big team.
So 4 forwards were on the ice that were questionable before this morning. Who's in, who's out, Aaron?
Well, this is what we're looking at here. So far, it's looking like McMahon, Matthews, and Robertson on the first line. Yikes. Nyes, Tavares, and Michelli for the second line. Dakota Joshua, Nicholas Roy, and Easton Cowan for the third line. And Laurent Domi and Sammy Blais for the fourth. You've got the usual suspects on defense. You've got Simone Benoit and Jake McCabe. You've actually got Morgan Riley and Philippe Myers and OEL and Brandon Carlo. So the guys that we're looking at that are currently listed as day-to-day are Joseph Woll, who still hasn't worked back in yet, Scott Lawton, Chris Tanev, and William Nylander. So those are the individuals that we're looking to see draw back into the lineup in the next week or so.
So this is something that I want to ask you. It's 8 games in. It's 8 games. 8, I think. Yeah. No, 9. They're 9. 4, 4, and 1.
9 games in.
9 games in.
Yeah.
Do you see Matthews getting benched?
You know what? It's a realistic possibility at this point. They may actually need to sit him to give him a bit of a wake-up call. In the past few games that he's played, I think he's been one of the least effective forwards on the ice, which is, that's not a good thing. If he's supposed to be your captain, even looking at the last 10 games, and this is going back into last year, 6 goals and 3 assists, 37 shots. Right now, he's shooting at a negligible percentage, which has to revert back to the mean at some point, because the goals that he's had, the majority of them this year have been empty netters, which is a cause for concern. If he's not scoring at 5-on-5 or he's scoring, into the empty net, then that's not where he needs to be. He is soaking up a ton of ice time. He's at 22:01. They may need to move him back to the fourth line or bench him just to give him a rest at this point, because it seems like he's taking
a reset.
Yeah. Soft reset. But like when he's playing almost as much as some of their defensemen, that gets to be a concern, especially because there are 4 forward lines but only 3 sets of defense.
Well, when you're wearing a necklace with a tire rim on, it's hard to travel around.
That's very true.
He's got a lot of that. C is very, very heavy, and his ability, the definition of who Austin Matthews is, defensive prowess. You can work on. You can work on that. You can show that you're making an effort to do it. But just because you're willing to learn how to do it doesn't mean you're good at it. Number one, and number two, when your job is to score goals, because literally you're not a playmaker, because he isn't a playmaker, so he's a goal scorer. He can have 37 shots, but he's got to have a higher percentage of them go in, or he's not the shooter people think he is. And the weight of that contract, which is the rim I'm referring to, gets very, very heavy. And here's a prediction I'm going to make. If he continues in this way, he will not be the captain of the American team. There are other players on that team that even when they made him the captain, that I was surprised that Austin Matthews was the captain of that team. Now, I support Toronto and whatever happens because of the city, the town. I'm not really a Leaf fan. So I look at the Leaf team with basically, I don't want to say critical eyes, but I just look at it like, just look at the team and go, so what's up with the team? Well, I said at the beginning of the season, we're 9 games in. The one thing Matthews would have to do is drive the offense. And Aaron, he hasn't done that. And he needs to do that being the player that he is and where he fits in the contract, where his contract places him, right? He's got to be more of a contributor, not just a finisher.
No, exactly. He seems like he's a passenger far more often than not these days. And yeah, I think it's great that, he has 5 goals on 35 shots. But at the same time, it's not really working. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And can we go to the other side, because I feel uncomfortable when we agree on something that is not complimentary to one of the Leaf players, because I always want to inject this because I know you feel this way. We both recognize they're people, right? And as a person, I can say this: the guy's trying his best, but unfortunately, this goes to what I talked about a long time ago, and that is nobody insulated him and Marner and Nylander into understanding that it was better for them to be down the list of paid players, highly paid, but down the list, because there's less pressure on you when you're not at the top of the list. And Matthews wants to be worth the money that he's paid. He definitely wants. I don't doubt it for a second, but it becomes an albatross around your neck. And that's the warning that I tried giving, 8 years ago, saying careful what you wish for that reason. Because if you get the money you want, because who doesn't want as much as they can get? Now you got to live in that world. You got to live with that contract. And this is always the core 4 was they were allowed to be okay, this is terrible, but I'm going to say the word anyway, but they were allowed to be selfish. They were allowed to think for themselves and do for themselves. And it didn't leave room for the team to say, okay, like what we're seeing with the best player in the world, took that less than full contract because he wants to win a cup. And that was the question back then that I doubted. And today it's now, this is what they're ruining. And Marner was smart enough to leave at this point because he knows what's coming, and that is a drop for the Maple Leafs. Now, here's the thing. They can drop a lot this season. As long as they make the playoffs, they've got a ticket to what everybody wants, which is a cup. Don't stop laughing. Okay, I don't want people stop. I can hear. Stop laughing. It's not funny. I'm serious. You can be a team that barely makes the playoffs and win the cup, and you could sneak up on people, which sometimes is an advantage over being the big dog, right?
100%.
So I'm trying to remain hopeful for Leaf fans and yourself to suggest that all they got to do is maintain the hunt into the playoffs. Struggle as they might, what really matters is they make the playoffs, and then do they have the right team that can play well in the playoffs? We know they had a great team that could finish first in the regular season, We also know it wasn't good enough in the playoffs, but the reverse is possible as well. And don't lose that hope. To Leaf fans out there, don't lose the hope that this team can go all the way. But they got to get on the road to all the way. And that's where they got to make these points that they've got at this time of year and then get more than their share.
No, that's exactly right, Frank. It's a question of tempering your enthusiasms and moderating
and disappointment. And moderate your disappointment too. Get your disappointment under control. All right, let's talk about the Blue Jays. They're playing tonight. You have here that Barger hit the first pinch hit grand slam in baseball, in Major League Baseball history.
Mm-hmm. As I mentioned before we got on the air, Frank, I do actually need to get going in about 4 minutes, so this will probably have to be the last story that we cover.
Okay.
Well, it'll be Addison Barger, when they brought him in, I don't think anybody expected this when they had him pinch hitting. It was absolutely fantastic to see. This is the first time it's actually happened. He drilled ex-Blue Jay Anthony Banda's offering a 2-1 slider, 413 feet to right center. It's his third home run this postseason. He was hitting for Davis Schneider. The night after, actually, funnily enough, crashing on Schneider's couch. So he's been sort of couch surfing for the time being. At the end of the day, didn't really hurt. Bunking with roommates is always a good thing. He came up with an absolutely massive hit. It was great to see. Salted the game away. So very happy about that.
What the Jays need tonight is to get to the bullpen. They got to get to the LA bullpen, and they need the old expert, the old warhorse, playing for his fourth team in the World Series, first time ever for any player, to pitch like he's pitched before. And I think the Jays can do it. They do have to get into that bullpen. They got to win this game because tomorrow it's Ohtani, I think, that they'll put out there. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, game 4 is definitely going to be Ohtani, but the issue that they have, again, is because of the way that their previous pitcher threw, you got to get through their opening pitcher to get to the bullpen. That is definitely the Dodgers' Achilles heel. Couldn't agree with you more on that, Frank. Hopefully they'll be able to do that tonight and work a bit of their magic.
And tomorrow, no Tani.
Hopefully, after what they did to him the last game, I'm definitely hoping for another appearance by Shohei Ohtani.
Want the dog jacket and the baseball cap back. Thank you very much. Have a great one, Aaron. Enjoy the rest of the night. Enjoy the game. And for all of you out there, enjoy the game. Check out Candid Frank Stanishi on YouTube, 10:30. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Frank.